The caucus meeting of March 1st, 2022 will now come to order at 7:46 p.m. Present are council members Williamson, Limpert, Kelly, Scarl, and Gilchrist. The mayor, assistant law director, finance director, directors Upton, Schofield, Carney, Kidd, and guests. If there are no additions or corrections, the caucus meeting minutes of December 22nd, 2021 are approved as written. There are no items on the agenda this evening for suspension, and so we'll move on to assigning legislation. Ordinances 2022-17 and 2022-18 will be assigned to finance. Resolutions 2022-19 and 2022-20 will be assigned to public safety, health, and welfare. Resolutions 2022-21, 22, and 23 will be assigned to building, zoning, and development. So moving on to scheduling committee meetings for next Tuesday, March 8th. Councilwoman Williamson, would you like to schedule public safety?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to schedule a safety committee meeting at 7 p.m. for 2022, 19, and 20. I expect probably only maybe 10 minutes. Mayor, do you think that's all we'll need?
I think that's sufficient. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Lippert, would you like to schedule building, zoning, and development?
Yes, I will schedule that for March 8th at 7:10 to discuss, what is it, 2019?
21, 22, and 23.
Thank you, 21, 22, and 23. To ask that the building representative be present, and that would be probably about 20 minutes. There's 15, 20 minutes. Mayor, do you have any idea?
Mr. President, to the
Mayor.
councilman, these are all just extending the policies that council has already extended in the past, so I wouldn't think it would warrant a discussion, maybe 10 minutes?
Yeah, let's go 10 minutes then, thank you. 7:10 to 7:20. And in that case, I guess I don't really need the building director present, just whoever your representative you'd like, Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Also, Councilman Lippert, would you like to schedule the finance meeting?
I would, and I'll schedule that to conclude after the BZD at 7:20, and that's discussed 2021-78.
Great,
And ask that the mayor's representative be there.
thank you. Just as an FYI, we do have the MX Hero contract still pending in finance. It was held in committee on December 14th. There does not appear to be any issue with the legislation itself. So it seems like as though the finance committee may want to hold it to consider alongside the box contract, which has since passed. And then during tonight's meeting, I will ask for a nomination for Clerk of Council. When a nomination has been made, I will ask if there is a second for that nomination. And after there is a second for a person, I will then ask if there are any other nominations. If there are, and that person gets a second, that person will also be considered. Once there are no nominations for the clerk position, I will ask for a roll call. And then when the name is called, you should state who you'd like to be the clerk from the list of those nominated. Once the roll call is over, if a nomination has received 4 votes, then that person will be appointed Clerk of Council. All that said, I believe we just have one in attendance this evening, so it's looking pretty good. So, does anyone on council have anything else they wish to bring up this evening? Anything from the administration?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Did the Finance committee decide on budget hearings
Oh. Yeah,
for
thank
March
you.
12th?
Thank you, Finance Director. I got slipped a late note and missed the more, just as important, but very important. I'd like to schedule on March 12th, the Finance Committee, the time to be determined, likely morning, to discuss 2022-17 and 2022-18, which is the annual budget.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the catch, Finance Director.
Hey, the budget's my life, man.
Okay, so seeing nothing else, the caucus meeting of March 1st, 2022 is adjourned at 7:52 PM. Council meeting of March 1st, 2022 will now please come to order. The audience is invited to join council in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Broussard?
Present.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Here.
Mr. Glassburn? Ms. Heeman? Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Limpert?
Present.
Mr. Scarrow?
Present.
Ms. Williamson?
Here.
Thank you for joining us at tonight's council meeting. It's also nice to remember what everybody looks like without their masks on. So, at this time, council will discuss appointing a new clerk of council. Are there any nominations on the floor?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Williamson.
I'd like to nominate Beat Taylor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing no other nominations, council members should now state the name of the nomination that they support for the clerk of council upon the call of the roll. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson?
Beat Taylor.
Ms. Gilchrist?
B. Taylor.
Mr. Limpert?
B. Taylor.
Mr. Kelly?
B. Taylor.
Mr. Scarrow?
B. Taylor.
Ms. Beatrice Taylor has been appointed the clerk of council by a vote of 5-0. And if all council members had been in attendance, I'm quite confident the vote would have been 7-0. So congratulations, B. Moving into reports, Mayor Daley Jones, do you have a report this evening?
I do, thank you, Mr. President. As council members saw, the budget is on the agenda tonight for first reading. Each of your detailed budget books will be available to you tomorrow. My administration is striving to provide you everything in advance so that you're not receiving information on the day of the budget hearing. So if there's anything else that you need or think that needs to be included in that budget book, please let us know. We'll work with our finance director to make sure that you receive all of that before March 12th. On Sunday, I had the pleasure of honoring Sam Joya for his prestigious Eagle Scout designation. Sam is a senior at North Olmsted High School. He's vice president of the student council. He was a varsity football captain, basically runs every group that you can imagine at the high school, and still has, a wonderful GPA and is definitely going places. So it was wonderful to recognize him and his accomplishments and his family who live here in North Olmsted. So I just wanted council to be aware that a proclamation was presented to him on our city's behalf. The gallery opening for the Mayor's Art Show is tomorrow night at Old Town Hall. It will be from 6 to 8 p.m. Council members are welcome to attend, but if you are unable to attend tomorrow, I would encourage you to find some time to stop by on either Friday, March 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. or Saturday, March 5th from 1 to 3 p.m. On Thursday, we will also post a virtual version online. There are more than 50 pieces in this show, and I'm proud of our high school artists who have worked so hard on this. And finally, fish fries start up again this Friday. On March 4th, it will be St. Brendan Church. March 11th is the Breton Ridge Women's Club. The Kiwanis is on March 18th. The North Olmsted High School Boys Soccer on March 25th. The high school after prom is April 1st. I Wear Gray for Calvin is April 8th, and the high school girls soccer team is on April 15th. I would encourage you all to attend every Friday of this Lent, and just a reminder of how that works. The city hosts the fish fry, but the the designated group for that day, any tips that they receive goes directly to the organization that they represent. And the event, though, is just drive-through again for this year, because obviously the city in planning this wasn't sure what was going to be happening with the COVID numbers. So it will still be a drive-through takeout for the year. And, Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Assistant Director of Law O'Malley, do you have a report this evening?
Mr. President, thank you. No, I do not. The law director sends his regrets. He had something come up. I have no prepared remarks.
Oh, no.
We'll keep it at that.
Quick, call on me.
Director of Finance Coffer, do you have a report this evening?
I have a brief report. First, we are going to our hosted environment on Thursday for our software, and also upgrading to the latest version of the Tyler products that we're on. So the financial software and other related softwares will not be available come from 4 o'clock tomorrow through the weekend, but it will be back up and operational on Monday, and will be in the cloud. Secondly, I just want to, I know that, that's great that the budget books are coming to you, but I have to tell you, this was a monumental task, and this administration has done a great job, considering people weren't in positions and weren't up to speed right away, and coming in one at a time, and the division heads and the people that are on the ground, really, they had started the budget process, but it was a citywide effort to accomplish it, and I just want you to know that I think you're going to be really impressed with it, and I think the presentation is good for the new people in the administration because it's by division, and it's also good, I think, for council because it will be less flipping from pages through a large report. So I think it'll be a win-win, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Moving into council committee reports, Councilwoman Williamson, Chairwoman of the Public Safety, Health and Welfare Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Limper, Chairman of the Building, Zoning, and Development Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
I do have a report this evening, Mr. President. Thank you. The Building and Zoning Development Committee met on 22nd of February at 7:06 p.m. Present were committee members Limpert and Williamson, council members Brassard, Scarl, Glassburn, Kelly, Gilchrist, Mayor, Law Director, and guests. On the agenda was CMS 21-2558, Smoke City Bake, located at 24137 Lorraine Road. The BZD committee has met before on this regarding the request for a conditional use permit. The application proposed an unconditional, unrestricted use permit to sell products associated with the smoke shop. Council originally granted a conditional use permit for this location in 2019, which was granted subject to an agreement upon restriction that he only sell vape and vape-related products. Mr. Yosef and Mr. Burku reviewed their desire to remove and alter those restrictions for this new conditional use permit. And this was proposed back in 2021 after some discussion with the administration and follow-ups from council. We met to discuss and made a recommendation to approve CMS 21-2558 by a vote of 2-0 to be amended with the following conditions. The smoke shop shall remain at its current location in the plaza known as Bentley Co Plaza. There shall be no strobe lighting, neon lighting, or other window lighting and signage installed in the storefront window. There shall be no display of merchandise for sale in the storefront window. The store shall not sell kratom or synthetic cannabinoids, synthetic cannathones, or synthetic hallucinogens in any form, and any sale of the product known to contain substance known as Delta-8 are restricted to personnel 21 years of age and older. The hours of operation shall be no earlier than 9 a.m. until 10 p.m., and no long-term box truck parking is permitted on the location. And after that, the meeting concluded at 8 p.m. Mr. President, that concludes my report. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve conditional use permit CMS 21-2558, Smoke City Vape, 24137 Lorraine Road, and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to approve CMS 21-20558, Smoke City Vape, with the conditions outlined by Councilman Limpert, made by Councilman Limpert, and seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
CMS 21-20558, Smoke City Vape, approved with the conditions outlined in the motion by a vote of 5-0. Does that conclude your
Yeah,
report?
it does, Mr. President. If I could just have a moment of personal privilege, too. I had the honor of being there Sunday as Mr. Joya is my neighbor, and couldn't be happier to have such a fine young man next door. And just wanted to congratulate all the mayors that were there, as there was 3 individuals from 3 cities. So that group got quite a parade of politicians to recognize them. So I guess I'm just the lesser of all of those adding on to it. But I did want to say that it was really heartening for me to see students be recognized for such an exceptional achievement of being an Eagle Scout, and it's inspired me to think about how we can do that more as a council, not necessarily in such fanfare, but find ways to recognize the great things that are being done by not only students but residents here in North Olmsted. So it was a great event to attend and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Limpert, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening, Mr. President, but I do let everybody know that we'll have some budget meetings here coming shortly, and when we'll set those up as discussed in caucus. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kelly, Chairman of the Streets and Transportation Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
I do have a report, thank you, Mr. President. The Streets and Transportation Committee met in council chambers on 2/22/22 at 8:05 p.m. Present was Council President Broussard, committee members Kelly, Glassburn, and Gilchrist, council members Limpert, Scarl, and Williamson. The mayor, law director, economic director, safety director, service director, and guests. Discussed was 2022-14 and 2022-16. 2022-14 was about snowstorm emergencies, and basically any period of 24 hours or less of snow falls in the city of 2 inches or more, an emergency will be declared to constitute a public hazard until canceled by the safety director, and that's on any city streets. If it's in B, part of that section is a significant snowfall is forecasted, the mayor is authorized to declare a snow emergency at a specified date and time until canceled by the safety director. This is a new thing for us, which is good, so the mayor has the opportunity to put this into effect before we get the snow. Then we discussed 2022-16. This is West 231st Street, the Economic Development Director to advertise for bids to provide construction services for West 231st Street, the rehabilitation contract. The city has applied for $150,000 in community block grants, and the estimated cost of the job is $250,267.50. The balance to be paid by the city. Also with this bid, we discussed the fact that there's residents on 231, and I've lived in that area my whole life. People like to see that West 231st Street might be widened some to allow for some parking. People are parking now on tree lawns, and it's not the best practice for the citizens. The residents would love to see a little bit more asphalt on the parking side of the street, so hopefully that can be determined somewhere down the road. And that is my report. Thank you.
Councilman, is there a motion to amend?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, I do have a motion to amend 2022-14 as discussed in committee, and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to amend ordinance 2022-14 made by Councilman Kelly and seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-14 is amended by a vote of 5-0. Councilman Scarl, Chairman of the Environmental Control Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
No report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gilchrist, Chairwoman of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
No report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Are there any letters or communications to come before council at this time?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. Moving into audience participation. Thank you for attending tonight's council meeting. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to address council, please come to the podium. State your name and complete address for the clerk. If you live in a city other than North Olmsted, please state the name of that city and proceed with your comments. You will have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, Dwayne Limpert, 4921 Berkshire Drive. I'm here as president of the West Park Forest Ridge Civic Association. We're trying to get something actually officially documented as far as who has responsibility for the Berkshire, maintenance of the Berkshire median and the circles on Willett. There's 2 circles in the middle of the road of landscaping and the like. For years, we've been told by the city, well, it's your responsibility, that property belongs to you, the association. Well, that would not be the case because A, the streets were dedicated 10 years before there was ever an association. We get no tax bills, we own no property. So I wrote a letter back in November to the city, went up, because we did not have a service director at the time, I went and gave it to Kim Winger because often she's the person that got a lot of things shepherded to places. We talked a little about it, never heard another thing. Last month, on the 9th, I forwarded it again to the new administration with a little more explanation and had not heard anything. I did write the mayor this weekend, and she has said now that kind of beginning to think, have they changed emails that much? You know, but anyway, nothing was coming. So what I will do is ask the administration, if I may, when we might get some answers, or we need to have a meeting, Mr. Service Director Kevin. Lou, you might want to give that to the clerk, because that's the communications. Does anyone else care for one?
Mr. President?
Mayor.
The service director has actually already been looking into this issue. Obviously, it's not just the West Park Forest Ridge area within our city that has these types of areas. It's throughout the city. He is working with his team to create an aggregate list, which we will then talk about internally with the administration, and then also if council action is needed, we will come to council as well to move forward on addressing these issues.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments from the audience, we will now move into legislation.
Legislation on third reading. Resolution 2022-13, introduced by Mayor Jones. A resolution authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to request statements of qualifications, SOQs, from qualified firms to provide professional consulting services for the development of a strategic economic development plan as amended.
Mr. President,
Councilman Limpert.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-13 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-13 made by Councilman Limpert and seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
Resolution 2022-13 is adopted by a vote of 5-0. Go ahead, sorry.
Legislation on second reading. Ordinance 2022-14, introduced by Mayor Jones and Councilman Kelly. An ordinance amending Section 351.13 and 351.14, entitled respectively, Snowstorm Emergencies and Announcing Emergency, Parking Regulations of Chapter 351 of the Traffic Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Olmsted, entitled Parking Generally, in order to allow the mayor to declare snow emergency parking bans on city streets and declaring an emergency as amended. Resolution 2022-16, introduced by Mayor Jones. A resolution authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to advertise for bids for the award of a contract to provide construction services for the West 231st Street Rehabilitation Project, as detailed in the specifications on file in the Division of Engineering, and authorizing the mayor, following approval of the Board of Control, to contract for the same with the lowest and best bidder. Legislation on first reading. Ordinance 2022-17. An ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the City of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mayor.
I introduce and place on first reading.
Ordinance 2022-18. An ordinance to make appropriations for capital improvements for the City of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2022.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-19. A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the North Olmsted City School District to establish policies and procedures governing the school resource officer, SRO, program, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-20. A resolution authorizing the mayor to purchase four new Ford Explorer utility vehicles through the state purchase program, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all purchase agreements and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-21. A resolution extending the temporary outdoor patio dining area program until December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, on behalf of myself and Councilwoman Heeman, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-22. A resolution establishing a policy to allow for temporary places of business in the City of North Olmsted and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-23. A resolution extending the policy for temporary signs in non-residential districts in the City of North Olmsted and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Thank you. Moving into scheduling committee meetings for Tuesday, March 8th, 2022. Councilwoman Williamson, would you like to schedule public safety, health, and welfare?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to schedule the Safety Committee meeting at 7 p.m. to discuss resolutions 2022-19 and 20, and I ask that the mayor or her designee be present.
Thank you. Councilman Limper, would you like to schedule BZD?
I would, thank you, Mr. President. I'd schedule a meeting for Building Zone Development on 8th of March at 7:20 to discuss resolutions 2022-21, 2022-22, and 2022-23, and ask that the mayor's representative be there.
Thank you, Councilman. I'll make a small correction.
I said 8.
We're going to meet at 7:10.
That's it, thank you. 7:10.
And we'll go to 7:20. Thank you. And Councilman Limper, would you like to schedule finance for March 8th and March 12th?
I would, thank you. So schedule for finance for March 8th to discuss ordinance 2021-78, and ask that the mayor's representative be there, and then schedule finance to discuss ordinances 2022-17 and 2022-18 for Saturday, March 12th at a time to be determined in the morning, and ask that the finance director, mayor, and any owners of pieces of the budget that will be there to present be available.
Thank you. Are there motions on the floor to excuse the absences of council members Glassburn and Heeman?
So moved.
I'm sorry, we'll go one at a time, please. Is there a motion to excuse the absence of Councilman Glassburn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion to excuse the absence of Councilman Glassburn made by Councilman Kelly and seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl.
Yes.
Councilman Glassburn is excused by a vote of 5 to 0. Is there a motion to excuse the absence of Councilwoman Heeman?
So moved.
Second.
Motion to excuse the absence of Councilwoman Heeman made by Councilwoman Williamson and seconded by Councilman Kelly. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Yes.
Mr. Limpert.
Yes.
Councilwoman Heeman is excused by a vote of 5 to 0. With the agenda being completed and there being no further business to come before council, this meeting of March 1st, 2022 is adjourned at 8:27 PM.